It is Sunday, November the 12th, 1995. My name is Kathleen Moran. I'm conducting an interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd in Forest Hills, New York. And the interview will be conducted in English. Kathleen Moran. My name is Kathleen Moran. I'm conducting an interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd on Sunday, November the 12th, 1995 in Forest Hills, New York. This is tape 1 of the interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd on November the 12th, 1995. I'd like to begin by thanking you very much for giving us this interview.
You're welcome.
Could you tell us what your name is?
Abraham Schwerd.
And would you spell it, please?
Abrahamschwerd.
And have you been known by any other names?
Yes, I don't know what I should say. Unfortunately, when I lived as Gentile, my name was Edek in Polish, or Edward. So my nickname became, I'm being called all over, Eddie.
And when were you born?
I was born August 4th, 1930.
And where were you born, sir?
Poland.
And where in Poland?
A little town called Bukowsk.
And how do you spell that? Bukowsko,
Bukowsko.
How old are you now, sir?
65.
I'd like to begin by talking about your family in Poland before the war. What was your father's name?
Isaac.
And where was he born?
He was born a little town next to Belz, Galicia, Poland.
And when approximately was he born?
I was here around 1908, probably, yeah.
And what is your mother's name?
Sarah.
And what was her maiden name?
Gunsberg.
And could you tell us where she was born?
She was born in Bukowsko.
And when was she born?
She was born, I think, in 1907. She was a year older than my father.
Did you have sisters and brothers?
Yes, I do.
Could you tell us about them?
Well, my older sister, thank God, we are all here in the United States. My older sister, her name is Bella. My other sister is named Regina. They both live in Brooklyn. And I have two brothers. One is Leo and one is Bernie. One lives in Kew Garden Hills and one lives in Borough Park.
And are you the oldest or the youngest?
I'm the youngest.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your life in Bukowsk, about your life at home. What language did you speak at home?
Polish and Yiddish.
And would you describe your family as a religious family?
Yes. My father was a Hasidic Jew. Before the war, but during the war, he had no more, when he came to the United States, no more beard, you know. He was just a Jew. Religious, though.
And did you go to school?
Just for 1 year.
And what kind of school did you go to?
It was a Catholic school, a state school, because we couldn't afford to have a Jewish school.
What were your experiences like in that school?
Well, every time I came home, either I had my ears pinched or pulled by the payas, and of course being cursed with all kind of dirty Jew and so forth and so on.
Do you remember what you were studying in that school?
Very little. It was first grade.
Did you have best friends when you were that age?
Yes, I had my cousin, which did not survive, same age as I.
What was his name?
Gunsberg. His name was so many years that he's dead, I forgot the first name. Shmuel. It slipped my mind, I'm sorry.
What did you do together with your cousin?
Well, we went to Cheder together, you know. I went also with my brothers, the same Cheder. We played, you know, sort of, till we were very happy, let's put it this way.
Could you explain what Cheder is?
Beg your pardon?
Could you explain what a hater is?
A hater. A hater, it's not a hater, it's a cheder with a C-H. A hater is a rabbi in the little towns. In their apartment, they had a room, and it's like different type of classes. Let's presume I went to a different class because I was the youngest. My brothers went to a different class, to a different Rebbe. There were about 5, 6 cheders in our town. And this is the way how we used to learn how to read Hebrew, study the Chumash, Rashi, and Gemara, so on.
And did you go to these schools after the regular state school?
Yes,
afternoon?
first we went to the state school, and then we went to the cheder.
Can you describe for us what your house was like, what your home was like?
Well, I was very fortunate. My father was a successful businessman. If you want to call, for Bukowski it was a big business. We lived in the center of town. And when I was born, my father built a 3-story building. Downstairs we had our business. Upstairs, the first floor we lived, and the second floor was already destined for my sister. If they get married, they'll live in the same house with us.
What kind of a business did your father have?
My father sold mainly grain, flour, sugar, and so on.
Let's talk a little bit about Bukowsk itself. How large a town was it?
Bukowsk had an inhabitants probably about between 600 and 650 Jews.
Was it a predominantly or mainly Jewish town?
No. I think that the entire Bukowsk had about, with the surrounding, had about 2,000
People
inhabitants.
altogether?
Yeah.
And where is Bukowsk near? What part of Poland is it
Bukowsk is very close to the Slovakian border, and the next town that is sort of, Bukowsk is also the town. On the map you'll find it. It's funny because on the map it says Bukowsko miasto, which means that Bukowsk is a little town. The map states it because they thought maybe it's a village. The next town is called Sanok, Sunik in Yiddish and Sanok in Polish. That was already, they had about 5,000 Jews.
How did the Jews and the non-Jews get along in Bukowsk?
Well, in the schools, the anti-Semitism was very, very great. However, and of course, they used to, matter of fact, we got, before the war broke out, one of the teachers came up with all the students, the Gentiles, and they sang a song, "When Hitler will come, we will cut your heads off." That was the teacher training the children. It was like 1st or 2nd grade. They went through the little town, and that's the songs that they used to sing.
Do you recall any talk at home, or your parents talking about the situation?
Well, no, I do not recall that.
Do you know if your father had at any time considered leaving Poland?
I don't know.
While we're still talking about your childhood, would you describe for us what your favorite holiday was and how it was celebrated?
My favorite holiday was probably Sukkot, because we had a sukkah in our home, a built-in sukkah.
Could you explain what a sukkah is?
A sukkah is a hut that when the festival of Sukkot comes, which is called Sukkot, when the Jews went out of Egypt, they had Sukkot, huts, and this is sort of like a remembrance for us. God commended that we should have this Sukkot, and you go out and from the apartment or from the house, and you go in to this type of sukkah, and you're supposed to dwell there for 7 days.
And how did your family
We
spend
did
the
that.
7 days?
Lots of people were even sleeping in the sukkah. Here in the United States, people don't, but there are quite a few that still also sleep in sukkahs, but very, very few. But in Poland, I would say the majority of the religious Jews that tried to sleep in the sukkah, although it was so cold, it's unbelievable. So, we had probably the nicest sukkah in town, because my father was well-to-do, and we had the means. So that's why I liked sukkahs.
Do you remember any special foods connected with
Sukkahs? Not necessarily. Oh, yeah, also. My greatest kick was before Passover. You see, it's not like here in the States, you go and you buy a box of matzahs. Over there, the preparation started. Grow the wheat. You have to watch the growing, take off the wheat, that any chametz, any fermentation should not come in. And then we used to grind the wheat on a little, which is called a mill, like a little hand mill. And with this flour, every Jew practically had to do this process. Buy the wheat, and then with a little hand mill, grind it. Of course, we had help that did that for us, but most of the people, I would say 90% of the town, the people, they had to do it on themselves, which is very hard to pull. That the stone on top is not so easy. And then we went to this flour to the baker. And everybody was sort of like enlisted to do this type of work. One needed the dough, and I, as a kid, I used to, with a, I don't know how they call it, a roller, you know, to roll up the matzah. And then somebody was sitting with like sort of like a little wheel, and it had sharp edges, and he went through the matzahs to make the, I don't know how you would call it in English. It was called in Yiddish a matzah-redel. In other words, it perpetrated the matzahs. And then, of course, this was something that most probably I will never forget.
Did you have other family living in Bakov?
Yes, I had two uncles and two aunts, and they had about the same amount of children. They were the same families as we were, 3 boys and 2 girls, or 2 girls and 3 boys, all of them.
And you saw a lot of them?
Oh yeah, my aunt, we lived in the same building, because the house was a partnership building that my father built with my uncle. They lived on one side of the hall, and we lived on the other side, right vis-a-vis, and the doors were facing each other. In other words, where our bedroom was, their bedroom was. Where our kitchen was, this is the way it was built.
So you did a lot of running back and forth?
Oh, most of the time. We did not know the difference between my home and then my aunt's home. It was about the same thing.
How would you describe your father's status in the town of Bakov and his relationship with the non-Jews as well as the Jews?
Well, my father was very well respected, because he probably was, whatever you want to call it, the richest Jew in this town. And you asked me about the relationship with the non-Jews. Well, 90% they came to shop to us from the villages and from the town, and of course they had to ask for credit, and my father gave them credit. When they paid up, he used to extend them again. When they didn't pay up, they came and they cried, my father did it anyhow. Then finally they had to bring some kind of a collateral. And that's the way how business went. I know one thing, that my father went with 80% of our assets that he possessed was on the books, which were not paid, of course.
I'd like now to turn to the period, the 1939, prior to the German invasion. How old were you then?
About 9.5, yeah.
And you were still in school?
No more. Once the invasions came, there was no more school for Jews. But a cheder we had yet.
Prior to the invasion, do you remember hearing any rumors about a possible invasion from Germany?
Oh, definitely. We know that the war broke out. There was a war. It started September 1st, 1939.
And had you heard before September 1st, 1939? Was there any talk or any rumors, or did it come as a
Well,
surprise?
my father was the only one probably that he read a newspaper in our town, which was in German. And my father was very much involved in politics. So we knew that first they took Poland, and at first they took away was Sudetengebiet, was part of Czechoslovakia.
The Sudetenland.
Sudetenland, yeah. And then, of course, Poland. They took part of Poland also into the Third Reich, which was called Schlesien, Oberschlesien, which is the city of Katowice, and so forth, on the border.
The Germans invaded Poland on September 1st.
Right.
About how soon after that did the Germans come to your area?
Well, we were 3 days sort of like policeless. We did not have, because the Poles did not act. They were afraid, and we were without police. So of course, the Ukrainians, we had like 16 villages around surrounding us. They came in and they robbed and destroyed all the Jewish stores. And that was during the time when we were policeless. And even the Polish police wouldn't help us.
And who was it who came in?
Ukrainians. Because all the villages surrounding Bukovsk, there were Ukrainians. And they knew, a lot of them used to shop by us, you know. So they came and they broke the windows and they robbed everything out of the stores, looted and so forth and so on. And then about 3 days later, we were occupied by the Slovakians from Slovakia, the soldiers. They were very nice. They came, they were with us for a very, very short while, and they retreated back to Slovakia because they thought Slovakia thought maybe we will be annexed to Slovakia. But we didn't, and they left, and then the Germans came in.
And about when was that?
That was probably like September 15th, maybe 14th, something like that.
And what are your memories of the German arrival?
It's very difficult to describe what fear we had when I was as a little boy, and I've seen those trucks, the machines, coming into the center of our town. And they were lining up. This was not the SS or Gestapo, just the Wehrmacht. And those big trucks, I barely saw a truck in my life because our transportation was horse and buggy by us. So I've seen those big trucks, and they were sort of like lined up. And the first thing what they did is they went to the synagogues, which we had 3 synagogues. And one was called the Klois. Klois is sort of like it's a synagogue, bet midrash, or whatever you want to call it. And then we had 2 Butei Midrashim, 2 larger synagogues. They came. The first thing what they did, they took all the Torahs, all the Hebrew books like the Gemarot and Hamashim, the Hilims and so forth, and they made like a bonfire. They destroyed everything. That was the first thing.
And what happened after that?
After that, they left, those Germans, and of course they gave the Polish police back the status to police us, but they did not get any guns. They weren't trusted. They were just went with the how do you call it, with the
blackjack or truncheon?
Something like that. And later on, and the Ukrainians had police. They were called the Zechovnik, And they were collaborating, of course, with the Nazis. And till about, that was from September till about the beginning of 1940, they took away my father's business, whatever was left. And they put in a Gentile there, a Ukraine, and he took over the store, and we were just pushed out. And I, as a child, I looked at it, I said, yeah, I used to come into the store, I used to come from school, play. I couldn't get into the store no more, because it was under their domain. They did it to all the Jewish businesses in our town. They put in a Ukraine, and he took over. If the Ukraine was nice, sometimes he helped you out a little bit, and if not, he just chased you out.
Were you and your family allowed to continue living in the building?
Yes. We were living on the first floor, yes.
What other restrictions were taken against Jews in your town?
Of course, then they came out with the armband, you know, the white. By us, we didn't have stars. We were wearing the Star of David. We were wearing a white band with the Star of David. But I didn't have to wear it because I was a minor. The age of 12, if I can remember correctly. You're supposed to wear an armband.
Did you have a curfew?
Curfew, I don't remember.
How did your family survive at this time with the business lost?
Well, there was some Gentiles that my father did them big favors. He used to give them the grain, like I mentioned before. So my father took me, I remember we went into the little villages. They gave us some grain. Some of them gave us some potatoes. And that's how we lived.
Were there any actions to remove people for forced labor from your town?
Yes. The forced labor started right in 1940. A firm by the name of Firma Kirchhoff. It was a German firm. Then we also had another firm. It's called Otto, O-T-T-O, Heil. And they were builders, road builders. So they start to take away the youth for labor work. They used to pick them up in the morning and bring them back at night.
Were any people in your family affected?
My two brothers, one was about 14 and one was about 15 and a half. They went every morning to work. And the supervisor was sort of like, the supervisor was, it's called a Volksdeutsch, which means he was a Pole, but his descent, he was born in Germany. So they were sort of, they had the upper hand on everything.
Were your brothers given any pay or any food or anything for?
They only, well, first of all, they served treif, which was non-kosher food, so they couldn't eat. But at night when they came home, you know, my mother managed yet to make some food.
What else do you remember about that period and the treatment?
Well, one particular day, my brother, one of my brothers, I don't remember if it was Bernie or it was Leo, and they couldn't go to work because they were sick. So my father told me, why don't you take his place? Because they were counting. If let's presume from our town, they shipped 80 or 90 youngsters to work. If one will be missing, you know, why there were questions that will arise and so forth. So my father said, you smuggle yourself through, go ahead. And I went to work for him. And I came on the road. It was a very warm day, hot. The sun was unbelievable, so warm. And I was hot, and I was holding one of these axes, you know, to dig into the earth. And I was perspiring, so I took off my shirt. And the sun hit me, and I got a sunburn. I don't know whether it was second degree or third degree sunburn. And I came home. This I remembered And then my brother went back to work. He went to work.
Did they conscript just Jewish boys, or did they take
Just
Polish?
Jewish, just Jewish.
During this period, did you or your family hear any rumors about what was going on elsewhere in Poland?
There were rumors, but nobody wanted to believe. Let's put it this way. But the only one who really was believed those rumors was my father. May he rest in peace.
Were you able to continue with your religious life during this occupation?
It was on the secret already. As soon as they burned down the synagogues, you were not allowed. You were not allowed. So the services were conducted in private homes, like for Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat, and so.
What about obtaining properly slaughtered meat?
Slaughtered meat, everything was on the QT. It was not allowed.
Did there come a time in your town when Germans took over direct control?
Yes, they used to come in from Sanok, just like as for a sport. They came in and they said to the Judenrat was, they were appointed from the town, with the help probably also of the Polish people. They were in charge. And they said, give us 10 Jews. So the Judenrat, they didn't want to give out Jews. So they went themselves and they played a little sport. They killed 10 Jews. This was probably 1940. Mother and daughter, father and son, and so forth and so on. Matter of fact, we had a tenant in our back. This I never forget. To me, probably, those days I didn't know what Hollywood was, but to me he was the most handsomest man I have seen. His name was Shloime Stern. One of his brothers survived and he lived in Tel Aviv. I think he died about 2 years ago. Sholem was his name. And he was married and he had a little child. And they shot him. He was dead. And the little child asked, when we went in over there to pay the shiva call to have the minyan for services. And the little boy asked, where is my father? Wie is mein Tata in the Yiddish language? What answer could you give? I don't think he was more than 3 years old. But he was very, attached to his father. He was the only child.
How long did you live in Bakovsk under these conditions?
Till 42. Till about September 42. It's close about 3 years.
And what changed at that point?
What changed, of course, the laws, more restrictions, and so forth and so on.
Thank you. We'll pause here to change the tapes.
Okay.
Mr. Abraham Schwerd, at the end of the last tape, we were talking about the years between September 1939 and September 1942. As you think back in that period of the early occupation, is there anything else that you recall that you'd like to tell us about what happened?
Well, of course, typhoid spread. And typhoid those days, 90 out of 100 of people died because there was no medication, So I remember vividly my mother, and typhoid is a sickness that people sweat. The temperature go up to 105, 100, whatever. They beat the thermometer, let's put it this way. And my mother, she was a very, very righteous woman. And they needed help. These families needed help. Some of them were put under isolation. It shouldn't spread out. And this I remember vividly. So my mother used to go to be, it's called a Beischleife, which means she came to the house where the sick person was there, And she said to the lady or to the man, you go take a rest and I will be up with the sick man or sick girl, whatever it was. And she used to do this on a constant basis. Then, when she left there, she took the linen off, because people didn't have extra linens over there, poverty. And she went to the, we had a little creek with an axe, mind you, with an axe, chopped into the ice, through the ice, rinsed out those linens, dried them up, and brought them back to these people. And of course, some food she also furnished to them. So the people in town, her name was Sarah, but in Yiddish she was called Sorcha. Sorcha, aren't you afraid? You have 5 little children. You have 5 little children, and you go into those, you will bring it home. Your children will get it too. And she said, from the mitzvah that I do, nothing will happen in my house. Now mind you, like I mentioned to you before, we lived across the hallway. My aunt was living also with 5 children. She did not go. In her house, right, like the hallway over here, right? My cousin got typhoid and nobody got sick by us. Can you imagine this?
Amazing.
That is amazing, yeah. She said, in the merit, what I do for these people, nothing will happen with us.
In September of 1942, conditions changed again. What changed at that time?
In 42, around September, and like I mentioned before, the boys used to go to work, my 2 brothers, in the morning and bring them back at night. And then all of a sudden they said that they have to find themselves in a certain place which was called Zaslav. It's like 10 kilometers away from us, maybe 12. Then also the next morning there were posters posted on the walls, wherever. Every Jew has to find himself in the square on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and he can take 25 kilo along with him. So I remember that day I went upstairs to the roof over there, and my mother gave me a sack, and I attached 2 shoulders to it, and I started packing my things. Everybody did, my sisters did the same thing.
Do you remember what you packed?
Well, I didn't have much to pack, this I can tell you. Mostly was food. They knew that this was the most precious things. My mother gave us each child, in case we get lost, from each other, a bread, and some, I don't think that we had anything else, bread, maybe some beans, and that maybe 1 or 2 shirts and another pair of pants, and so that was about it. Maybe I don't remember exactly, because I didn't pay attention. I know that my sack was full. This I know, and I made it into a knapsack, because you couldn't buy knapsacks by us. This was a very rarity, and we supposed to come to the marketplace on Saturday morning. And this was Friday, when I finished with my knapsack, and my 2 brothers were gone already. And my father, Friday night, about 15 or 15 villages, the Ukrainians that lived surrounded us, there were some Jews living there. Each village had maybe 1 or 2 Jews. And they were summoned also to come in to the square, these from the villages. Before that was on a Friday night, they came into us because we had a big house. And my father goes in to my uncle and tells him, his name was Halpern, Chuna, or Charlie if you want to call him in English. His grandchildren are doctors here. And he said to them, listen, I am not going under the knife. In Yiddish he said, Ich gehe nicht inter Messer. Ich weiß, Hitler will not I know that Hitler will not let one Jew survive. That's the way how I think about it. And he said to him, listen, look, let's go to the forest. And he went to another neighbor. His name was Mayor Graber. And he said to him, Mayor, you come with me, and this is the only way we're going to survive. My mother opened up the stove. Over there in Europe, everybody used to make his own cholent. You know what a cholent is, I presume?
Perhaps you could explain.
A cholent is, you prepare it Friday, you put in beans, and you put in some flour, and if you have a piece of meat, of course, you put it into the oven, and then they used to close the oven, sometimes even with a little cement, like cemented, and this was there overnight, and in the morning we used to take it out, and this was the food for Shabbat. So since that was Friday night and the cholent was prepared, we didn't want to leave it. I mean, this was such a delicacy. Where can you get something like this? And especially it was food. We opened up, my mother opened up the oven, she pulled out the cholent, she gave us to eat, and she gave some, we shared with those Jews that came from the villages. Everybody had a little bit. They went their way, we went our way. They went also some of them went to the forest. We went to the forest, which was deep into the forest. And that was Friday night, about 12 o'clock. On the way there, it was like already, as we approached the forest, maybe a kilometer into the forest, my father turns around and sees my sister is gone and my cousin is gone. And my father made a statement, 2 sacrifices he brought already. That's it. Who's going to find them in the forest, you know? And that was Friday night. So we came Saturday there to the forest. My father made a sukkah, a little hut, because God blessed us with rain. That in Jewish they say, as regnet, it comes from all corners, you know. And to be in the forest without shelter, you know what that means. So he made like a little sukkah, and every day he improved it, put in more leaves and whatever he could find, just that the rain shouldn't go through. That was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday he says to our neighbor, this Mayor Graber, let's go into town and find out what happened with everybody. My father had one Gentile there, that he was quite a good man. His name was Radojitsky, Paul. My father helped him out, of course, every year, that the grain and so forth and so on, and they had to plant his in the field. So, and also we left him our very valuable belongings by him. We told him, look, we're going to hide out, so we'll come to you and you'll help us out. That was sort of kind of a deal. My father went into town and went to this guy whose name was Jędrek. Jędrek is a Polish name, Radojitsky. And he came in, he gave him some potatoes. My father returned. As he was already in the middle of the forest, he told us the story later. He said to this Mayor Graber that he went with, you know, in Jewish there's a saying, wherever you lose, that's where you're going to find it. Let's go the same pattern as we went. And my father was very well oriented. Daylight approached, because like 5 or 6 in the morning, and they passing, my father looks, was that all of a sudden he sees a little raspberry tree shaking. And he sees, pushes away the tree. They're laying over there, fainted, white. Mind you, this was from Friday night till Thursday night. They were under that tree. All what they had with them, you see, we were so conscious about certain things. Everybody carried something in his pocket. They had a half a kilo of sugar. In case you get separated, what that happens. With that sugar, they survived for 4 days. And from the rain that was raining, they stuck their tongues out and they drank. And we brought them back. I don't have to tell you the joy. Back they were united together.
How did you survive in the forest?
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Also, when my father came back, that was the first time, and he said from the town to find out what happened with the Jews, to this Gentile, he told them, this one they caught, got shot. The rabbi got shot. This guy, whatever, because a lot of Jews, not a lot, I would say maybe 15-20%, they were hiding. But where they were hiding, the hideaways were practically a joke. Just like you would play hide and seek. They came, they were hiding someplace, I don't know, behind the house, and they found them right away. So that was the news that my father told us, that they took away most of the people into this concentration camp lager, which was called Sanok. And in the interim, they caught this one, that one, and so on and so on. And that's what this Gentile told him. So on regular basis, but we needed food to eat. I think I have mentioned it to my father, and I said, look, Tata, Daddy, I don't want you to go into to the town, because if they capture you, nobody will survive. So I was going on 13, and I went twice a week with a knapsack in the winds, and I came to this guy, to this Gentile, and he gave us a little potatoes and a bread. The journey took like 10-12 hours. The distance was probably 8 kilometers maybe, but in a forest, hills up, hill down, this is for the Carpathian, you know. And I was going with another young man, We went like twice a week, and we brought some potatoes and some bread. Of course, during the day, then the winter, the cold came in. So my father started making a bunker, started digging for shelter. And we made 3 bunkers right next to each other. And we covered them with branches, leaves. And it wasn't so cold in the winter came. This was probably September, not December. When I came into this Gentile and I heard, so I asked him, what happened? So they tells me that about 30 or 40 boys are coming into the town from Bukovsk, from the concentration camp, and they're going to work in Bukovsk again. So their job was they want to clean out the Jewish houses, you know, everything for the Germans. And most of them I knew. So I made contact with them. But the night, one was on a Monday and a Wednesday. And matter of fact, this guy Stern, what I told you that he was shot, his brother was there too. And he told us the news. He was in the lager already, in the camp. What happened over there? The first day Rosh Hashanah, he told us the story what happened already. Even was like 6 or 8 weeks later, 5,000 was sent away to a concentration camp. If I'm not mistaken, it was Belzec. And this was not far away also from, by the way, there's no survivors. Nobody survived from those. 5,000. Then they start making selections. It's called selections. Selection. The old ones, you couldn't work. The sick ones, They opened their grave. They kept on shooting 200, 300 a day and so forth. The bottom line was, till about the end of December, they called in already those workers, the 70, from Bukovsk, from all over. They had spread some workers around. And they wanted to finish them off too, unless they were strong, to send them away someplace to a concentration camp. And my father, again, like I said, was a very big pessimist. And my two brothers were in that camp working also. So he sent a message. I sent a message to them to escape, because they're going to liquidate probably the camp. I forgot to mention a very, very important, I don't know, did I mention it or not? We came to the forest, it was like 6 or 7 days before Rosh Hashanah. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur we were captured in the forest by a ranger. This ranger was a Volksdeutsch. A Volksdeutsch, I mentioned before, was, he did a dual citizenship, I don't know, but he was descent German. Of course, they had tremendous privileges and so on and so on. And they made him in charge of the entire forest. And he caught us with another ranger, which was a Pole. And he starts screaming, "You dirty, filthy Jews, you're supposed to be in the concentration camp. What are you doing here?" So my father says to the Polish ranger, Mr. Temchak was his name, Temchak. He said to him, "Look, you know what I did for you. Every year you used to come to me, you needed grain. Did I give you grain?" He says, "Yes." "Was I good to you?" He said, "Yes." "How much do you owe me now?" "Do you owe me like 200 or 300 zlotys, which was the currency in Poland?" He said, "Yes." "I'll let you forgo with everything, but just tell him to let us go. Because if he will bring us into town," that was the law, "if you came in voluntarily, then they put you to the ghetto. But if they caught you were captured, they shot you on the spot." So my father said to him, "Tell him to let us go. Because if he brings us in, they'll shoot us. We're going to come in on our own." And he said, "No, we can't do it." So as we came out already almost in the open field from the forest, my father says to this German sort of ranger, told him, "Listen, look, you want to shoot us, you shoot us right here. But you're not going to bring me into Bukovsk." My father was proud. He didn't want to see the Poles, what's going to happen to us. "Shoot us right here." He took off his gun, sure enough, and he goes to shoot my father first. And my father was a very, even though he was a religious Jew with a beard, but he didn't have no more beard, he grabbed his gun. And he stabbed my father right next to the heart. And the blood came flowing from my father. And there were two other children, my age, 6 months younger. And he started screaming, you know. So the Pole says, "Let him go." This Polish, let him go on their own. Finally he says, "If I ever find you again in this forest, I'll shoot you right here. I wouldn't even bring you in." That was his statement. And he let us go. We went back to the forest. And that was Erev Yom Kippur, day before Yom Kippur. We had no food, and Yom Kippur, of course. And after Yom Kippur, we had no food. That was the third day. A miracle came. We found an apple tree in the forest with little apples. And that's how we survived Yom Kippur, the day after Yom Kippur.
That's amazing. How was your father's wound taken
Oh
care
yeah,
of?
I forgot to mention. You know that it's being brought down in the 5 books of Moses, the Bible, how the Jews went to the fields. You know, Pharaoh gave out a a decree that every Jewish boy should be thrown into the Nile. So the Jewish women used to go out in the fields and give birth to the children over there. And the commentary says over there they were well and fine, that God was there over there. That's exactly what happened to my father. He was stabbed normally. If this would happen in the United States, he would be like a week in intensive care probably, and 3 weeks, whatever. The next morning he walked around. My mother took off a kerchief. She was a shaved woman. She didn't have no hair yet. And she bandaged him with that kerchief.
And he survived.
Yeah.
When
I forgot, the bottom line was, this guy, the German ranger, was looking for us, and we were hiding. That Polish ranger, the Temchak, helped us hide against. They shouldn't find us, and my father made with them a deal. You will give us some bread, and I will give you American dollars. My father had American dollars. That was the safest currency, like those days. And for a little while, he brought the bread. Let's say bread was $1. He charged $5. Just the bread. This was going on, but we have seen that the end will come. We wouldn't have any of this. And the interim, like I mentioned before, my father sent this guy Temchak to the concentration camp to meet my brothers and tell them to escape from there because they will not survive there. And the contact came, and they somehow managed to escape. It was like probably like 25, 30 kilometers from there, and they came to Bukovsk. They went to this guy, Gentile. His name was Radozhitsky, and he told them, explained them that I come twice a week. When I'll come, I'll pick them up and bring them to the forest. And so it was. I came there and I brought my two brothers. This was like middle of December. We were like 16 people, and they brought friends, and people in the camp heard about this, So they ran also, and they came to us. We were 42 people in that forest already. This guy, Temchak, that he helped us shelter, to hide from this German. In the city, in the town, in Bukovsk, people in the bar were talking, oh, he has a new sweater, and this most probably must be hiding Jews on the Temchak. And he was afraid. He wanted to cover himself. There was one family by the name of Tallenberg, a family of 12. He himself brought the Germans and they shot them. They were like 3 kilometers away from us.
In the forest?
In the forest. So when my father went to visit, he used to go visit him periodically every second day. He came there, everything collapsed, and all their bodies were laying scattered over there. So my father said, most probably he's going to do this to us also. And one guy that came from the concentration camp to us also into the forest, he knew the borders very well. And we picked ourselves up, and that was, one transport went like Christmas time, like 10 or 12 people. And we supposed, because you cannot go 40 people to a border, so we tried to make it into 3 groups.
And this was, you were traveling on foot?
Beg your pardon?
You were traveling on foot?
Not foot. We went to forest to forest, because it's connecting into Slovakia. And one group made it, and then that was the time when my father found out that this family, Tallenberg, got killed, that they killed them. He said, we're not going to make 2 groups, everything will go all together. And that was Sylvester, which is New Year's. And the guards were drunk, apparently. And we went the entire night, because the winter night starts very early. We left around 5 o'clock, because during the day you would never try to smuggle a border. So it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we went, I don't know exactly how many kilometers it was, but I know one thing. There was one mountain, which was called the Beskid. That was the name of the mountain, which was so steep. And to climb, you had to go like this, and it was very icy. But when necessity, when it comes something like this, from where you gather the strength, it's impossible to explain. But that's the way how it was. But one of my uncles, my uncle, he died. He froze to death. So the family didn't want to come. They wanted to stay with him, but we were already on the Slovakian side. So we came into Slovakia. A little town was called Medzila Borce on Slovakian, and in Yiddish it was called Mezhelabres. And the next couple of days they brought in my uncle dead, of course. He was buried over there, and the family. The Slovakians, the Jews paid up the government, the police over there, and they let them be legal, sort of, for a little while, because they were the saying went to the high authority that once they recuperate themselves, they will be shipped back to the border. So sort of they were like legal there, And I was very much envious because they sat in a room and I had to sit in a double ceiling, like I mentioned to you before. For 3 months, you were just laying. You had to go to the bathroom, you had to wait till the evening comes. They'll let us in. We were hiding there by a Jew.
I'd like to go back to the crossing over into Slovakia.
Yes.
What were conditions like for Jews in Slovakia at the time you arrived?
In Slovakia, most of the Jews, about 80%, were already deported to the concentration camps. A matter of fact, the Slovakian Jews, they were in Auschwitz before the Polish Jews, and they built the concentration camps, of course, not on their own free will. They were forced to do it. But 80% they transported, and about 20% those Jews who had the means, had a lot of money, they paid up the government, and the government said that we need those Jews because they are very helpful, because everybody was working for the German government, and the Slovakians were helping the Germans. So these are the Jews. They were there like in a town that used to live 150 families. There was like 15 families. And this was, and they lived free, open. They had a synagogue and everything. And they helped us out over there. That's about it.
Thank you. We'll pause now to change the tape.
Okay.
On our last tape, you and your family had crossed over into Slovakia from Poland. How did you find someone to help you?
Where, in Slovakia?
In Slovakia.
Oh, there were Jews. And these Jews were helping us out. And for a while we were hidden by a Jew in a double ceiling he had in his house. And then we were shipped to Humene, which is the next town. It was a bigger town, much bigger town. And this was a Jewish school, and there was this man by the name of Hans. He was very well liked by the police and so forth. So we were in that school, sleeping there, eating, and matter of fact, they provided us. We used to take baking powder and make packages out of it, some kind, just to live a little livelihood, This was going on from March until September. And by the way, I wanted to mention, as I told at the beginning, how we used to, you asked me what I liked the best, and I told you about making the matzahs. In that town, Humene, also the same thing, don't forget this was during the war. And Manischewitz wasn't there, Horvich for sure not, But you needed matzahs. There were quite, I would say, probably like 30 or 40 families. So they came to the school, where we were, the refugees, the Poles, and they brought the wheat, and they put us in 2 of these little mills, and we had to do it for a certain fee, of course, we charged them. So I remember, And we were working in shifts. My shift came at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had to stand over there like this. I will never forget this as long as I live. I was so tired. I wanted to sleep, but they woke me, and I had to do it. Then I found out how heavy to turn that wheel was. And, yeah.
Could you clarify for me, you were refugees from Poland.
Right.
You were Jews from Poland
Right.
in Slovakia.
Mm-hmm.
Did the Slovakian authorities know who you were?
No, but they were all bought up. And you know what? They all took, how do you call it?
Bribes.
Bribes.
And how long did you stay in that particular town?
Till September. Then they arrested this man Hans, and he sent a message to us. He said, "Boys, you better clear out because I cannot guarantee anymore your safety." So we went to the next town, which is what's called Prešov, which is on the border from the Hungarian border. And the next town on the other side is called Košice, Kašau, in Hungary, in Hungarian language, and Košice in the Czech language. And we crossed the border. We had a guide. The men made arrangements. Came in the middle of the border. The guide left us in a stable someplace. That's it.
Who all was with you?
My parents, and we were probably 5, 4, 6, 12, but 16 people.
It was your family and your
My
uncle's
entire
family?
and my aunt with her children, and another 2 boys that were survivors. Their parents were killed already, also cousins. And he left us in that stable. Came morning, we look around, nothing. So my father said to me, "Why don't you go and find out? I know that we are very close to Kašau." And there was this lady, she spoke Hungarian also with us. Matter of fact, she worked in a bakery there. And she came along with us. So, but she spoke Hungarian, so my father suggested that she should go with me to find out, to look for some Jews to help us, to bring us into to this town. So we did. And as I'm going, I'm approaching, getting very close to the town. A policeman on a bicycle, a Hungarian policeman, stops me. He looks at my shoes and he says, "You have mud on your shoes. You're coming from the border, aren't you? Because it's a border." I said, "Oh no." He says, "Are you from Poland?" I said, "No." Then he says, "Don't tell me stories." And he started, of course, and then I told him I don't understand the word what he's saying. So I told him to speak to me in the Slovakian language because he was talking Hungarian. Then I told him, "Listen, look, I'm a refugee from Slovakia. I'm young. What are you going to do with me? You're going to capture me, give me over to the authorities." And that time yet, the Jews were not shipped to concentration camp yet. This was 1943 yet. Yes. And he said, as I told him that I had some money, he should help me get into town, because I told him, "You can guide me or guard me, because if I go another couple of blocks, feet, I will be captured by someone else. Might as well you do it for me and take me into the town." And so he did. It was on a Friday. And he showed me, this is a synagogue, and the lady and I came into that synagogue, and Friday afternoon, there was a short day. I mean, the day was very short. The Jews started gathering to the synagogue. I see the Jews with stramler, the fur heads, packages, the silk. And I said, "Oh my God, where am I? Must be in heaven. I haven't seen this. This was forbidden in Poland from 1939. What's going on?" Then one Jew came over to me and asked me, "How did I get there?" So I told him, we found it. I have a family with 14 and 15 people on this road. I explained myself approximately where it is. And He went out himself. His name was Mr. Sorry. His name was Mr. Schwerd. He went, and Saturday morning he brought in my parents, and we were in Kaschau like 24 hours. I don't go into details. The arrangement had over there. They wanted money from us, and we were heading towards Budapest, and we arrived in Budapest from Kaschau.
I'd like to go back and ask you a question.
Sure.
When you were asked where you were from, why did you choose to say you were Slovak rather than Polish?
Oh yes, the reason why I spoke the language quite well already, the Slovakian language. It was a short period, but when you're young, you pick up the language. Because I've chosen to say that I'm from Slovakia because from Poland, if they captured you from Poland and they shipped you back on the other side back to Poland, you were shot on the spot. The Slovakian, they dealt a little bit different with the Jews. They put them in a concentration camp. Camp was named was Novaki. There were quite a few Jews over there. Those who they captured are supposed to be shipped out to the concentration camps.
Thank you. Tell us about your arrival in Budapest.
We arrived in Budapest, and I came there, and I've seen Jewish life going on like never ever happened. Yeshivas, synagogues, Jews in the street, thousands and thousands of Jews. And mind you, this is only Budapest. From Poland, the maximum would be like 300 kilometers, not even. And life was a normal Jewish life in Hungary, with the Jewish schools and everything. And in Poland, they annihilated already maybe 3 million Jews. So when we arrived over there, naturally, where do you put the refugee? Into the synagogue. To a synagogue there we were sitting, and then we have been told that there's such a thing, it's called the Keok. And we go over there and we state that we are Roman Catholics. We will receive papers as Gentiles.
And why did you do that?
Because we needed some kind of a documentation of who we are. So, and it wasn't so easy to obtain it also. However, I remember there was a saying that the Poles in the Hungarian, they have a treaty made from 89 years ago, and they call themselves brothers. So in 1939, when the Polish army broke up, about 30,000 soldiers approximately, I think, and they went to Hungary. The rest, of course, went to the PW camps. And in Hungary they lived normal, and they did not touch them because the Hungarian had that treaty, like I said before, and Hungary was pro-Nazis, helping out, and his name was Horthy. He was the prime minister, or he was a military man, and he said to the Nazis, I'll deal with my own Jews, don't mix in. So this Polish army was there, so it went for the Polish army also. He wouldn't give him out to the Germans. And they lived their normal life, the Poles, they got married, they had children, and they had some kind of an office there, and we were sent to this office, and we received our papers there. They used to issue like passports.
And how did you manage to make a living, and how did your father?
Oh, in Hungary?
Mm-hmm.
No, we received help from an organization, a certain amount, and the rest we had our own money.
And where did you live?
We lived at the beginning when we were issued those papers, and then we were summoned to leave Budapest to go into a different city. They didn't want to have so many people in Budapest, and we were summoned to go to a city was called Nyíregyház, a Hungarian city. So we came there, And this was around, just like before the occupation from the Germans in Hungary. Must have been right February. We come over there. The Jewish life is even much stronger than in Budapest. Real yeshivas. I went to I've seen a Shoah chicken, slaughtered a chicken. I haven't seen these things. And they were living, eating. The Hungarians are known to cook very well. And I tried to obtain a little bit of Jewish studies. So during the day, I was wearing a cross, of course, but during the day I smuggled myself into the rabbi's house. And he was teaching me a little bit. So in the rabbi's house was such good food because they have those Hungarian gooses. And they are the best, very, very fat. Of course, we do not go for these things. And I just wanted to know that I thought most probably I'm someplace in heaven. After 4 years, to have a regular meal and to eat, to be not to be hungry. That was in Nyíregyháza. Then the Germans occupied Hungary, March 20th, I remember vividly, 1944. They took this guy Horthy was his name, and they put him in the prison camp. And a new guy has risen, took his place. His name was Szálasi, and he was a fascist. And he started right away with all, of course, the propaganda, the Jews, with the ghettos, and the Jews are this and the Jews are that. You have seen those posters in the street, that Jew with a nose like this, just like the Nazis did. And then, around June time, the deportation started.
I'd like to ask you, clarify something for me before we get to the time of the German occupation in March. You had papers saying that you were Catholic.
My name was Edward Szaszowski.
And yet you were being taken care of by Jewish organizations,
right.
And you were studying. So was this a situation in which you had papers saying you were Catholic, but most of the people you were with knew the truth?
Of course.
And they weren't particularly interested.
I lived among the Jews. But in the street, when somebody stopped me over there, which is very often, any police, wherever you go in Europe those days, passport, if you don't have papers, they put you to prison. So we had a passport that we are Polish refugees, and that was a very, very great help. And this was arranged, by the way, by the very dignitaries, the Hungarian Jews. They made this type of arrangements with those people from that council, let's call it, it was a council, that any Jew, we were 1,500 refugees from Poland. Any Jew who comes up there and he wants papers, just issue them papers. It was all paid up.
Did you have to learn any different behaviors in order to try and pass yourself off?
As Gentile, I want you to know that for a Jew to improvise, a Gentile is very difficult, especially a religious Jew. Our behavior is different. And at night when I lived with a Gentile, my brother was sleeping and he made, oi, Gentiles don't make oi. And once the lady said that she heard the oi of my brother when we were in Budapest, had to run away immediately from there. She said, you must be Jews. And we lived as Gentiles. So it's very, very difficult to put yourself into that and to improvise like a Gentile.
Coming back to the time of the German takeover in March of 1944, where were you living at that time?
Nyíregyháza.
And how long did you stay there?
Till June.
And
then the deportation started. The rabbi that I went, like I mentioned before, he was shipped out. And they brought him from all the villages. There were about 50,000 Jews in that neighborhood, from all the little towns. See, the little towns, the Germans did it this way. Everybody had to come into this big town, and from there the deportation started.
How did you and your family escape the deportation?
my father said, we heard, my father was planned to go back to Czechoslovakia. In Slovakia there was an uprising, the partisans. It was called, that city was called Banská Bystrica. And there was an uprising, and there were partisans, and a lot of Jews ran to them, for shelter. So my father wanted to do that also. So we came back to Budapest, and my father and my mother and my oldest brother, they crossed the border. One night we supposed to go on the second shipment, sort of, second transport. And they arrived, and I was captured again on the same border in Kasia. My two sisters, my brother, and another two ladies.
Did you have anyone helping you, or were you on your own to try and get through to this border?
No, we were recommended to a guide, and he did the same thing what the first guide did when we were coming to Hungary. He left us in the middle of the woods. So I made myself. We made it back into the town to Kasia, and by the bridge we were supposed to cross a little bridge. There was a guard, and he looked at our shoes again. That was their trick. And they said, "You're coming from the border, right?" And they took us, he put us into a prison, regular prison. We were there for 9 weeks. I still had my papers on me. And they kept on beating me. I should confess that I'm a Jew. I said no. So they called in a doctor, and he told me to take off my pants. He examined me, and he said, "Jewish." So I came to the conclusion. I told them, "Listen, look, my mother was Jewish, my father was Gentile. And according to them, it was better than to be a Jew. Let's put it this way." And we were there for 9 weeks.
Could you tell us again who was with you during this 9-week period?
My brother Bernie and two sisters.
And did you see them, or were you kept separate from them?
When they used to let us out for fresh air, 50 minutes, in a prison, they let you out into the courtyard. I used to see them in the courtyard.
And what happened at the end of the 9 weeks?
At the end of the 9 weeks, we were shipped back to Budapest. My two sisters, they sent to another prison, and my brother and I, Bernie, they took us into an orphanage, a Jewish orphanage.
How were you sent back? How?
By a cattle wagon.
And who was guarding you?
A Hungarian fascist. Yes, we were about 70 in this wagon.
And what happened while you were in the orphanage with your brother?
And then, of course, the deportation kept going on and on and on. And so we knew that we were going to be next probably shipped out too. From
Do you
there.
remember about what time of year this was? Was this maybe
Yes.
September, October?
It was September, just before the holidays, before Rosh
1944.
Hashanah. Because my brother has a very good voice also, and he knew the services. He was not even 16 for Rosh Hashanah. So I know exactly what time it was. And from there we escaped. We ran away from this orphanage home because we didn't trust them. Don't forget, we had the experience already what was going on in Poland.
How
To
did
live
you
with the
get
Nazis.
away?
Oh, if in the orphanage we didn't have to run away. We just took off. Because we were guarded by Jews. But yet, you're a minor, And we never came back there. And we went back to Budapest. And we contacted a certain organization. It was called the Shoah. Somebody told me about it. I came up to them, and they issued us again Gentile papers.
And what name did you take at
I
this
changed
point?
my name from Szaszowski to Olszewski. And my sisters, they changed totally their name because when we were Szaszowski, we were like brothers and sisters. But since that incident happened, that they examined us, so we knew already the story. So when they issued us the new papers, they had a entirely different name.
And what name did they take?
Kochańska. Kochańska, it's also a Polish name. We named after the Poles that we knew from our...
So the four of you were still together after the escape?
Not together, we did not live together. We got those papers. I lived, let's say, 5 blocks away. They lived in a furnished room, and I got myself 2 furnished rooms. because at our age we were already summoned that we have to work for the Germans. So the lady, the landlady, if she has seen that you are not working, she would go and squeal on you. So what we did is, we had 2 apartments, we had 2 furnished rooms. On one furnished room, I sat the whole day. So I said to the lady, we're working night shifts. Then I left, I went to the other place. Nobody, I said, we're working day shift. Because you couldn't have to go to work. I mean, money was no problem. We had enough money, our own money that my father gave us along. And we received also help from the Israeli organizations, the Shoah. Yes. Finally, this was till after the holidays around, and the transports were going one right after another. And they kept on shooting Jews in the ghetto because we were walking around outside of the ghetto like Gentiles. We pretended as Gentiles. And then it came about Christmas. In the furnished room that I sat the entire day, I had mentioned to you before, we had 2 rooms. There was, next door lived a Pole, and he was from the Polish army. And he knew that I'm Jewish. He was quite friendly. His name was Joseph. One day he comes to me, this was like before Christmas, maybe 10 days, and he says to me, Edek, I want you to know I just met a lady, and she ran away from the ghetto with a little child. And she hasn't got where to stay. Is it okay with you? I'll bring you to the apartment that you're not sleeping in, to the furnished room anyhow. I said, why not? Bring it, by all means. She came there, that lady. She was, I don't remember exactly the age. To me, she was old because I was 13 years old. You know how it looked. She must have been like 35, 37, and with a little child. And I said, who's this? She says, that's my daughter. I asked her, where you come from? She says, from Lemberg, which is a city in Poland. And she told her she ran away from the ghetto, this, that. She also tried to live as an Aryan, and she wouldn't get papers. And she lived with us for a couple of days. I have noticed that somehow her makeup wasn't the Jewish makeup. And I got suspicious. I speak to the child, and the child speaks only German. So I said, how come that your child speaks German? She was hidden by Germans. Then I ran away from Lemberg. Lemberg is Lvov. That's a very big, one of the largest cities in Poland. Christmas, the day of Christmas, Christmas was the 25th or the 24th? The 24th December. She says to this guy Joseph, to the Pole who lived next door, sort of maybe they had some kind of a hanky-panky there, I don't know. And she says to him, listen, look, and she tells me, Edek, how's it going to look like you're not going to have a Christmas tree? You're supposed to be Roman Catholic. The landlady, she was a Catholic. So what do you want me to do? She says, we'll go out and we'll buy a tree. Fine. So she went away, it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She did not return. As I'm sitting and waiting for them to come back, because I wanted to go to my other place to sleep, they did not come back. So somehow I say to my brother, you know, Bernie, it stinks. Something is not kosher there. I say, that woman must be something. So we left that room, we went back to our night quarters, and it was curfew, but I was wearing short pants with my brother, and we were wearing those Hungarian scut, like the scouts, you know, the scout cap. We were allowed to go out even after curfew, because it always said we go to help people, so forth and so on. And I said, listen, why not step into our sisters for a couple of minutes, discuss with them the issue. Come up to my sisters, and I tell them the story. And my older sister says, let's run away now. She must be a squealer, you know. an informer. About the same thing. So I told him, where are you going to run now? It's curfew outside. You cannot go out. Bernie and I can go out, but you can't. In the morning, we'll go someplace. We go to a different district. I come back to my apartment. I call it apartment, the furnished room. And the lady had prepared a Christmas meal. And she started, unfortunately, you are here because we were pertaining to the Gentiles. She was Gentile. And she gave us to eat, and the Catholics have like 7 or 12 type of menus on the Christmas Eve, especially the religious ones. She kept us feeding us. And for 18 months, I did not eat. I went through the entire war. I did not eat treif, what means non-kosher food. For 18 months, I lived on margarine and bread only. So we came over there. She prepared us that meal. And she says, I'm so sorry that you're not together that holiday with your parents. I told them that we run away from Poland because the Russians are getting near. And my father is in the German army, helping the German army, whatever. And we are here because we are afraid of the Russians. So she sort of like shed a little tear. She said, unfortunately you are here without your parents for this great holiday. And she gave me meatballs. So, of course, I had to pretend that I'm eating it. So I took a meatball, and she turned around, I put it into my pocket, and I kept on going like this, and when she turned around, I went to the bathroom and flushed it down the toilet, because I didn't want to swallow it. This was about 9 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. We hear knocking in the door. Aufmachen, open. 6 came in. 6 came in. 2 Gestapo, 2 SS, and 2 Hungarian fascists. And I hear they ask the lady, you have Poles, Jews here? She says, no. Do you have Poles here? She says, yeah, but they're 2 children. Unfortunately, they're here with a holiday, but without this. Let us see those children. And they came in, and one of them was also from Silesia, but he was an SS. He took out the gun, and he searched my brother, and he found a telegram from our parents from Slovakia. And they connected us that we are sort of kind of spies, because there was the uprising. They started hitting my brother, Bernie.
Thank you. We'll pause here to change the tape. (1995). I'd like to ask you about, in your time in Hungary, you said the Hungarian Jews were living in such a way that you thought you were in heaven. Did they have any knowledge of what was happening in Poland and Slovakia?
They knew that the Slovakian Jews were deported quite a bit, but nobody knew actually what happened, because the German propaganda was that everybody went to a labor camp to work. And from Poland, they apparently didn't know anything. But in the end of 1944, they knew already, because the Hungarian Jews, those who were army eligible, they were not trusted with arms, but they were helping the soldiers. So they were in Poland, and they had seen already what happened. They were fighting with the Hungarian army against the Russians. So that when they came back, they start telling. But before, till 43, they didn't know anything. I don't think they even comprehended. Matter of fact, when we came to this city or town near its house, and there was this man asked my father in the synagogue, tell me, what did you do so bad? Why did you rebel against the Polish government that they chased you out of Poland? I mean, can you imagine a question like this?
What did your father tell him?
Nothing. Another Jew asked, did you bring your covers? The bed covers? I mean, they did not comprehend what was going on. They thought we did something bad and they chased us out of Poland. Most probably they sent flowers along with us or whatever. Nobody knew that almost 3 million Jews were already slaughtered. And that's why, I guess, if they would have, if the Germans wouldn't have hid these things, most probably a much greater amount of Jews would have been saved because they had the means. They could have gone to different countries, to Romania, to Yugoslavia. And they all had one slogan. Nothing will happen to us because we are Hungarian citizens. They're only going to look for the refugees and those who are not Hungarian citizenships. This was also masterminded to them. And that's why nobody made a move. And that's why, you know, the end what happened.
When the Germans took over in March and shortly thereafter, in
Right.
1944, the deportation started outside of Budapest, what were the people told about where they were going? What did the Germans tell them? Do you recall?
There were no Germans. Most of them were shipped by the Hungarian fascists. Like I mentioned to you before, the Horthy government was, how would you say, they put him in a labor camp, a concentration camp, and they put up this guy Salashi, and he was worse than the Nazis. He built the ghettos, he made all the deportations, he collaborated along with the Nazis. The Nazis didn't have to do anything in Hungary.
So
All the Hungarians did it
so it was
on their own.
the Hungarian fascists or the Arrow Cross that came
Right,
out.
right. The Hungarians did it.
Coming back to Christmas, 1944, and you were telling us about what happened after the Christmas Eve dinner.
Oh, so they came up. It was around 11 o'clock at night, and we heard the knocking in the door. And they come in, and they asked the lady, "Do you have any Jews here?" And she replied, "No." "Do you have any Poles here?" We were in the next room. We lived on the 4th floor. So she said, "I have 2 children over here, unfortunate children. Let me see them." So like I said before, they came in and they searched my brother. They found a telegram that my parents were in Slovakia, and they connected us that we were sort of kind of spies because the uprising was in Slovakia. They kept on hitting him. They handcuffed us. See, if they wouldn't have handcuffed us and it wouldn't have been the 4th floor, we would have escaped. We had already, comes to these things when you fight for survival. You will never believe what you can break through. You can bend iron, whatever, when you fight for survival. But we came downstairs and they put the handcuffs. So I say to my brother, "Look, our parents don't know whatever happened with us. We were together with the parents till 1944. They will never know. In other words, not a remembrance will be what happened to us, because they're going to kill us now." So I said to my brother, "At least our sisters maybe will survive." As I'm talking to him, they take out a little piece of paper and they read, "Bersensee Straße 13. That's Bersensee Straße means the Bersensee Street, number 13. The 2 sisters live from these Verbrechers, and we were on different names. And I still didn't comprehend what was going on. They went up there, and they took my sisters. And they said the same thing. I hope they didn't take our brothers. We were only worried one thing, to tell our parents. Somehow we had that feeling that we will survive whatever happened to us. So we were praying they should survive. They were praying. Then they came down. We met all together. They took us into this station, and this was a German station or Hungarian fascist station. As we're coming in, and I still didn't comprehend, I didn't understand what was going on. We come in to an office. A German comes out in a robe, in a night robe. Must have been a high official. And I see this lady, this Polish lady, sitting behind the desk. So I say to him, I say, "What's going on over here?" Most probably I thought there was a raid, And they picked her up too. But as soon as she comes in, the German came in, and she tells him, I don't know whatever you call him, here hast du 10 Juden. I promised you 10 Jews, and here you have 10 Jews I brought you. That lady who lived with me in that room, she was Ukraine. She collaborated with the Nazis. Later on, she collaborated with the Russians, I found out. And she told me, you wanted to survive, to kill me like you Jews killed in 1940 in Lemberg and Lvov, our people, because the Jews by the Russians had a little free hand. So those, maybe they did something, I don't know, but everything was exaggerated. But anyway, these were the last words that I heard from her. You wanted to survive, and they put us into and they kept beating us, and then they put us into a prison downstairs. Like it wasn't a prison camp, but a prison like you have in the station houses, overnight prison. We came in there, and I see 2 of my friends are there too. That lady followed me where I went to visit my friends, and they picked up 2, and they went to follow those 2, his friends, and they picked up another 2, so we were 10 together over there. And they put us in the prison, in the room, in the cell. They put a guard, because they knew that we are from Poland, we know already all the experience how to escape. And he said, this high officer that was wearing that nightrobe, and he said, you know what you did? I said, what did I do? So I said, you broken the German law. You supposed to be killed in Poland, and you escaped from Poland to come over here. You know what you deserve for that? You have broken the German law. You have violated the German law. That's what he told us. And they put us downstairs into the cellar. And they had a guard, a regular soldier, Wehrmacht. And I tell them in German, was denken Sie? Sie werden den Krieg gewinnen? Well, in other words, I told them, you think that you will win the war by shooting me? And he tells me, oh, my child, I am from the Wehrmacht. I haven't seen my family in 2 or 3 years. What can I tell you? He had no answer. So I asked him what's going to be, where we're going to go from here. So he said, in the evening, the Hungarian fascists will come, and they will take over. When I heard this, I told my sisters, they were right in the next room, we could communicate. And I told them, listen, look, most likely to go on. But what the fascists did, they take every Jew that they caught, shot him into the Danube, to the water. Yeah? So I said, when we're going to come to this square, I told the other people, my brother, he came the fascists arrived, the Hungarian, an old man with a big gun. So I said to myself, until he'll take off the gun, 5 of us will disappear already. And as we walk out from that prison, 2 of our people, they got lost in the crowd. There were people still walking in the street. So this Hungarian, the old man, counted. You see, there's only 8. Blew the whistle. They came out, and the Germans, the fascists, they were running, searching. Mind you, they still have time to do this. It was almost 20 days before the liberation.
Were you aware that the Russian army was already on the outskirts
Are you
of
kidding?
Budapest?
We were in the shelters most of the nights. They were bombarding. And yet, mind you, they still had all this time to kill the Jews or whatever, to be occupied with the Jews. I mean, in a situation like this. But anyhow, they caught those 2 people, and they brought them back. They were beating them to death. And instead, this old man, 2 volunteers came, young Germans with machine guns, and they took us to a bridge like here, the Manhattan Bridge. And this was the place where they used to shoot the people. They come on the bridge, on top of the bridge. They used to shoot them and throw them into the Danube. One says, too easy, let's put them into this prison. There was a prison right next to the bridge. And the Germans were coming on tanks back and forth. They didn't know where to go. They were surrounded. One young German jumps down on the tankist, from the tanks with a gun, and he asked the guard, "Who are these?" So he said, "Jews." "Ah," he said, "darum haben wir den Krieg verloren." Therefore, that's why we lost the war. The Jews. And he started hitting us. It was something unbelievable. I was lucky. I was hiding myself among the others. So I wasn't hit, but all the others, my sisters and my brother, they were all wounded. And they took us into a prison. This prison was called, this was the hardest prison in Hungary. Only spies they took in there. It was called the Fő prison, right next to the bridge. Right next to the bridge. They came in there. Another guard took us over, and he said, "Get undressed," and start searching in the clothes. "What do you have? You have money, foreign currencies?" That's what the guy asked. I said, "No." But I had $200 American in my shoe. When my father made me shoes with a double leather on the inside and the outside, or whatever it was, and in between I had the $200. So when they took our clothes, they took the shoes towards a light to look through if there's anything hidden. They knew all the things. So I knew that will be the end of me. Once they found the currency, they shoot you right on the spot. They shoot each other. That's what they did. So he said, "Give me your shoe." So I took out one at a time, and I gave him. He turned around and said, "Give me the other shoe." I gave him the same shoe. I don't know, God gave me some kind of understanding. Otherwise he would have shot me right then and there. And then they threw us into a cell. This was December 26th, probably, or the 27th. And we were there till January, Sylvester also.
New Year's.
Apparently Sylvester was my lucky day.
New
all
Year's.
the time, New Year's. And so they took us into this prison, they put it into the cell, and then they came to ask us who wants to volunteer to give out the food to the prisoners, and especially when it's somebody who speaks German. So I went. So there was a big barrel of soup, whatever, you know, in the prison you have those little windows, and they put out like a little fan, and you pour in a little soup over there and a piece of bread. As they opened that little window, I see the guy who opened the window, the prisoner inside, I see he's a priest, a Polish priest, with his uniform, Polish uniform. Like I mentioned before, the army, the 30,000 soldiers, he was an army priest. Somehow they put him in there to the jail. So I told him, "Listen, Father, I want you to know that I'm a Pole, and I'm Jewish, and I have excellent papers. In case they come to verify to you that I am Jewish, that I'm Catholic, you should say yes." So he said, "By all means," this priest. Then he says, "Can you give me a little bit more soup?" I say, "Yes." I gave him another water, a little bit more water there. This was like a Wednesday, a Thursday. Then Sylvester, right. But Sunday was Sylvester, if I remember correctly. Saturday night, oh yes, in the interim, they start bombarding this prison, whether it was the English or the Russian, I don't know. And our prison was hit by a shrapnel, whatever. So they opened the door, and the guard opened the door, and he said, "Alle raus, everybody downstairs to the shelter." And he was sort of like wounded already, bleeding, maybe he got hit with something. We came downstairs, I've seen my sisters there. And I've seen Germans, soldiers. I've seen American flyers, Russian flyers, English flyers. They were all captured. This is the type of a prison it was. It was a spy prison. They kept spies. It was very well guarded and so on. The bombarding stopped. And then they opened door and said, everybody on the second floor. They came into the second floor. Before we were like on the fifth floor. They pushed us in like 60 or 70 people in one room. I was among, like I said before, Germans, Russians. They were all captured. That was Saturday night. Saturday night, they opened the door and they asked, who speaks German here? So one guy volunteered, I also volunteered. I come out and they said, listen, look, we are evacuating the prison. Because the Russians are very, very close. We want you should help us load up the trucks. And we, fine. So what did they take? Typewriters, certain kinds of documents, papers. We kept unloading on the truck, and the chauffeur was a woman, a German, what do you call it, a WAG. She was a soldier. And she said to the guard over there, give him a pack of cigarettes for the labor that they worked over here. So we were 4 people, and we divided the cigarettes, 5 cigarettes among each other, and we came back. I want you to know that in this cell that I was there, nobody understood each other because there was all different type of nationalities. But when it came for Jews, everybody understood. Everybody understood. Once they called Jews, they knew right away. I mean, everybody understood, but it was Russian. So when we came back with those cigarettes, they wanted to attack us. I said, okay, you want my cigarettes? You give me your bread in the morning. I'll swap you for this. So I made swaps, and I got extra breads, and I gave him the cigarettes. In that room was a man, and he was coughing and crying all night. He had asthma. To be 60 or 50 people in one room, I don't have to tell you what that means. You couldn't sleep, he was just standing up. You couldn't lay down, there was not enough room. And he kept, you know, somebody has asthma and he can't breathe. So when we came back and we swapped the cigarettes for bread, and there were that man all over there. But I'm just bringing it in because I have to point out something what happened, who that man was. And that was Sunday morning. So about 9 o'clock, a guard comes in and he says, today we are liquidating this prison. All the Jews will be shot, and all the and a lot of them will be, a lot of the other nationalities they'll let go free or something like that. It's got to be. Okay. So one guy among us, he survived, and he said, let's go to sleep a little bit. We'll come in the other world. They'll ask us Judgment Day what we did in this world and so forth and so on. He made like a little joke. As he's saying this, the door opens again, and they call him, his name. And I say to my brother Bernie, they just called, his name was Ziggy, they just called him. 5 minutes later, another guard comes with his pistol in his hand, in a fascist uniform, and he says, Olszewski, Edward, and Stanislav, come. They took us out, and my brother tells me, Bernie, this was like 12 o'clock, Sunday, New Year's Eve. New Year's Day, and he says to me, now they're going to shoot us. The Russians are already behind us, I mean a couple kilometers away, and now is there justice? So I told him, Bernie, met the schießen. They will not shoot us. Sagt er mich schicken, are you crazy? Don't you see they're taking us right to the water? I say, met instant schießen. As we go, this guard tells us to go, and I see they're not taking us, he's leading us towards a side entrance, not to the main gate. We came out, he took us out over there, which was very close to the water. A car is staying over there. And I come close to the car, I see my two sisters there, and a man in civil clothes in that frame that they took out before. They came, the reason why I mentioned the guy that had the asthma, they came to look for this man. He was the vice consul from the Swiss consul. And he was with me in the same room. Somehow they couldn't find him. They came to rescue him. This fascist and the guy in civil, they came to look for him and they couldn't find him. So he said to the guard, "Do you have any Jews over here?" The guard answered him, "No." "Do you have any Poles?" Because he knew that every Polish Jew that is over there. So he said, "Yes." So he said, "Bring me up a couple of Jews. Let me kill them. I don't want to come for nothing." So they brought up my two sisters. And he starts hitting them. And then the guard goes a little way. He said, "Bist du Jiddische? Are you Jewish?" This man. She said, "Yeah." And this is my Schwester. That's my sister. And he took him out. And he was ready to leave. And they could not find this man, the vice consul. When we come over there, I see my sisters over there. What happened was, he was afraid himself, the guy in the civil clothes. He was in a regular suit and a coat. He was afraid to come by anymore into the prison. He sent his chauffeur. The chauffeur was in a fascist uniform. What happened was, when they brought out my two sisters and into the car, when he brought them out, and he told him he's going to take him into the ghetto someplace, that he's Jewish, so she said, "Listen, I have here two brothers. I will jump right in now to the water if you don't go rescue them. If you don't go rescue them." So he was afraid to go already. So he sent the chauffeur, his chauffeur, this driver. So the driver took us out. We went into the car and we crossed the bridge. It was like here, the Manhattan Bridge. It's a large bridge. And he took us in to the Wallenberg, to a house that had the Swedish flag. We came over there and we were received also, but they were hiding out some kind of Zionist organizations, but we wound up again with the Shoah, which they were sort of like communist party. And we were there till the 18th of January. No Nazis came into that because it was sheltered. But then we hear tremendous knocking in the door, and somebody went to open the door from the house, and I see a man with a fur hat with 5 stars, and I knew it must be Russians. And he comes in. They open the door, and he comes with his machine gun, and he says, "Me. Обсвободили вас. We freed you." That's what he said. "Me обсвободили вас." He came in and he asked, "Who speaks Russian?" So the Hungarian Jews, most of them were Hungarian Jews. They don't know. It's an entirely different Slavic language. And I said, "I speak Polish," so we could communicate. So they asked me if I know where there are some magazines. Well, here it's called differently. A magazine in German means where you storage.
Ammunition?
Not ammunition, clothing, and how do you call this? Stepped out of my mind. Warehouse. If I know of any warehouses. So I told them, I think I have an idea. So they took me in on a truck, 2 trucks, and I took my brother with me, and I told them, I think this is one of them. But it was Hungarian or German, it makes no difference. They took out the machine gun, brrr, and the door just popped out. We came in over there, and they found textile, textile material. and they start loading, taking out to loot the place, take everything out on the trucks, big bundles of textile. But I remember as a kid in my town, we used to get a new suit for Passover. So my father was a rich man who used to buy English material. And these materials, I remember they used to talk, came in 3 yards, just enough for one suit. It wasn't in bundles. So I told the Russian, listen, look, you take the big bundles. I want to take the little ones, a few. Is it okay? Yeah, you can take. So I said to myself, I picked up with my brother maybe 20 or 25 pieces. Yeah, of course, for 25 suits. Then we went to a different place, and we got underwear. Then we went to a different place. We found pocketbooks, and we kept on looting. And I took all these belongings into the ghetto, and there was a lady. It was already liberated, like I said. And I put it in over there, and I said to the lady, look, her name was Mrs. Cohn. I want to store something here. You will be well paid for that. She says, yeah, why not? And we did it. And this was like Wednesday, Thursday. We were liberated on the 18th of January. The 18th of January, yeah. The 20th of March, they occupied. The Germans occupied Budapest. But the 18th of January, we were liberated from the Russians. So hunger was going on. There was no food to eat. Yes, I wanted to mention one thing. The guy who took us out and put us into the Wallenberg house, his name was Marine, and he, of course, he didn't have a beard or so. He impersonated like a high official. And he asked me one thing. I want you to promise me one thing. I say, what? He says, I want you to remain religious. I rescued you. My life was threatened, but I want you to remain a Jew. So I told him, of course, in person. So I was very Jewish-minded. So the hunger struck Budapest. There was nothing what to eat. And we didn't know what to do. So we have decided we're going to go to a certain place that was liberated already like 3-4 months before. And we were heading towards Romania. So normally from Budapest to the Romania border should take, it's 200 kilometers, maybe less than that. It took us 4 days.
I think we'll pause here to change the tapes again. You were telling us about you and your brother and your sisters leaving Budapest.
To search for food.
Yeah.
So also we heard that not far from the Romanian border, which was liberated 6 months before, they were liberated in 1944, July or August. And we were heading there, and we came into a town that was called very close to the Romanian border, Hungarian town yet. It was called Békés-Csaba. Békés-Csaba, that's the name. Large Jewish population used to live there. And we arrived over there on a Friday, and I go into a house, and I see religious Jews with beards sitting by a table, and there's challah and fish and soup, and I mean, only in heaven you could imagine something like this. And they were treating us very nice. And I don't have to tell you, I was like this finger, so thin. And then on Sunday, we were looking for a place where to live. So I found there one Jew, and he said, "You're more than welcome to live in our house. I have an empty house. My parents are not here. They were deported." And he was the rabbi's son from that town. His name was Halperin, and we went to live over there. So when we left Budapest, like I mentioned to you before, we had so much piece goods and pocketbooks and everything. When we came over there to Bekeshchava, we had to live on something, and they tell me that for one pocketbook I can live a month. And we had at least 100 over there. We took along with us like 4 or 5 pocketbooks, a couple of pieces. So I say to my brother, we are millionaires. And we moved in over there to this that rabbi's son, the Halpern, to that house. And this was approximately, just to give you an idea, the date we were liberated, the 18th. It must have been like the March 1st, February 1st or February 2nd. In the interim, I wanted to tell you, I walked into the ghettos with the Russian army there, and to take a look what's going on. They brought out on it's called a platformer, like a truck. They don't have the trucks. They have it horses. Have you ever seen those big, like the cantaloupe guys sells the big candles?
Flatbed.
Yes. And they were taking out Jewish bodies, young ones, stacked like wood, on top of the other. Black. The bodies burned already. All. They took them out of the ghetto. They were laying there who knows for how many weeks. And all these things put together, that's why I've decided that I want to leave. And the hunger was unbearable. Wine we could have. I got drunk every day. I didn't know what that was. I didn't comprehend what means getting drunk, but I felt something, I don't know. And in that town, we lived over there from February till about June of 1945.
Were you able to make contact with your parents?
No, not at all. They were not liberated yet. We were liberated in January, and they were liberated on June, or at the end of May, Bratislava. But I didn't have a slightest idea if they're alive. I mean, So what was, and all of a sudden I took ill, my joints. I slept on cement maybe 9 weeks or 10 weeks in the prison, and it went into my joints. When I sat down, I couldn't get up. So when we heard, this was around the end of May or beginning of June, in that city, Bekeshchava, I heard that one Jew came back already from a concentration camp. This was June, right? So I went to the synagogue. I was walking with crutches, And I come in and I see the first Jew, repatriant it's called, with the stripes, with that cap. And he came from a concentration camp, which was called Wiener Neustadt. Next to Vienna was a concentration camp. And he was the dignitary of this town. His name was Mr. Goldblatt. Goldblatt was his name, yes. His name was Mr. Goldblatt. So I did not know the man because I'm not Hungarian, I never lived in that town. And everybody ran over to him because they were Jews already. They're living, like I mentioned to you before, with the Shabbos, with everything. Because they were liberated for 6 months. When everybody started clearing out, I go over to this Jew and I said, first of all, here I said to him, Shalom Aleichem, And I tell him, I think that we have parents in Slovakia, Bratislava. Did you by any chance, because when you come from Vienna, you have to go through Bratislava to Hungary. You could go to a different way, but most of them came through Bratislava. And I say to him, by any chance, maybe you bumped into a family by the name of Schwerd? He says, you are Schwerd? I say, yes. your mother made me Shabbos in Bratislava. When I heard this, then I knew that my parents are. And I was wearing these crutches. And I made it home to my apartment to tell my sisters that I heard the news that my parents are alive. So I didn't know what to do. So my brother Bernie pulled himself together and he said he's going to search for them. Those days, to make 200 kilometers took a week because everything was bombarded. He picked himself up to go to Bratislava. I didn't hear from him. Nothing happened. It's about 5-6 days. And I was anxiety from it. I was very anxious. I picked myself up and I said, I'm going to. But I wasn't well. But I made it. I get into a train and I spoke already a little Russian. I picked it up very fast. And I got into one of the offices. There was still, Berlin was not liberated yet. I don't remember exactly when the end of the war was, but Berlin was not liberated because the two transports of soldiers were going to the front. And I got into one of those with the soldiers, and I sang him a little song in Polish and Russian. They gave me a little bread, and I arrived to Budapest. It took me like 3 days. I come in the how do you call it, the railroad station. I see my brother. You know what a big railroad station this is? Thousands and thousands of people were sitting there. I see my brother and my oldest brother.
This is in Budapest? Or
in Budapest, on the railroad station. So I ran over and I said, Leo, what's it? Tata lebt, the mama lebt. We're all alive. So instead of me heading to Slovakia, I went back to pick up our sisters. So we all, the 3 brothers got together and went to Baker's Chaba to take our sisters. We took our sisters and started heading towards Bratislava to get united with our parents. It took also like 3-4 days the journey, and it was already before Shabbos, and the train stopped like 10 kilometers away from Bratislava. It didn't move. This was the usual procedure there. So I was lucky. Another train passed. I jumped off from there, and I went to the other. Like I told you, I was going on canes, but when it came to jump, I moved because necessity. So I got on the train and I got into Bratislava just before Shabbos. I come in, and my parents had a room on the Jewish street. It was called Żydowska ulica, which means it's the Jewish street. And I come into the yellow courtyard, and I see my father. And I say, Shalom Aleichem, Tata. And he says, who are you? I say, I am Avram, Abraham. It's my... So toch gemeint bis Leibisch. When he left, it was only like 2 years. I was 13 and a half, and it was 15 years. By 15, you know, you grow a lot. And then my mother came out. I greeted her. She had anxiety. She fell and broke the wrist. She was a cripple till she died. She saw me. My brother got my mother from crying so much that she lost us. When we were separated, that she got cataracts in her eyes. She turned almost like totally blind. She was operated here from crying, you know. And then my sisters came and my brothers came. We were united. We had one room. Everybody lived in one room. And besides, we were 7, the family. We had like 25 other people. It was a large room, as large as this, from the camps, with the stripes already. There was no food. My mother went to the gypsies. She gave them a jacket, and they gave her a chicken. We slaughtered the chicken, and my mother made, from one chicken, she made like 50 portions of soup, and she kept on feeding the Häftlinge. How do you call a Häftlinge? Those from the concentration camps. And we lived over there for a little while, and then we moved across the street, and things became normal.
Did you return to school in Bratislava?
Oh, that's what I'm going to tell you now. So the black market started. Black market, and everybody, all of a sudden, you see, in a way, it was very fortunate that you Jews grabbed onto something, All of a sudden, here, 6 years, you were depressed, oppressed. You didn't have a self-image. Nobody had an image. But somehow, business does something to a person. We started to revive, and we started to exchange monies for Russian rubles and German marks and American dollars. And my father was quite a smart man, and the 3 sons, he sent to Budapest, and my other brother went to Munich, and my other brother went to Vienna, and everybody was carrying currencies. One particular time I was carrying 200,000 ruble. That was like 200,000 American dollars then. And I went to exchanges for American dollars. That's the way how the black market went. On the train. So I couldn't ride in, because still was wartime. The soldiers came and went and this. So we were riding on the roof. One Russian soldier went searching, and he came to me, he touched me. They knew that a lot of them carry from the camps money, and he took out his knife, and he cut me, and he took off all the money and he went away. Thank God he didn't do anything, just give you that idea. Then, of course, the black market, but then like 6 months later, we were liberated in June, but the beginning of 46, I started to attend. Jewish life started a little bit. Survivors came back, and they built up this city of Bratislava. And my father was very well known because of his good deeds that he did for the people, especially those who came from the concentration camp. And I attended the yeshiva till 48. 48. I received papers. I had a family here, and they got me a student visa. And my brothers and I, they would not let out my father. And we came here from Czechoslovakia to America. And our first stop was the Rabbinical Seminary of America in Williamsburg on South 9th Street.
And you came with your brother Leo and Bernie?
My brother Bernie, yes.
And where were your parents and where were your sisters?
My sisters were in Vienna, my parents were still in Slovakia. And later on we got united.
And who helped you when you came to this country?
The Joint. The Joint helped us. Yeah, they gave us $20 a month per person. Well, you could live, and we had a furnished room. And I went to yeshiva, and my 2 brothers went to work a little bit, and we lived in a furnished room. And when I came to this yeshiva, I sang Friday night, songs. So somebody told me that they think that I could become a cantor. They have all the qualifications. So there was this cantor. He needed somebody to lead his choir, and he trained me for a little while. This was the Talmud Torah of Flatbush. Do you know where it is?
I've heard of it.
Okay, it's on Coney Island. And he trained me to lead the boys over there, to help them out with the services. But the solos, he told me to do all the solos. So the first night, the holidays, I did the solos. Mekenta was davening, praying. After the first night of Rosh Hashanah, he comes and he says, the president in the synagogue, I have an idea. Why aren't you the cantor? Let him be the leader. And this is the way how my career started, to become a cantor. These same people, they issued papers for my father as an assistant rabbi, and within 6 months, we brought him down to the States. No quota.
So the whole family,
the whole family got reunited. Not the entire family, because my 2 sisters one lived in Vienna, one lived someplace else, but later on we all came, but they were married already. And we got united, and they lived in Williamsburg on Tompkins Avenue. I don't know if you know where it is. Tompkins in Tompkins in Willoughby. Tompkins and Willoughby crosses, yes. I lived over there, and then I started studying. The joint helped me out to take singing lessons and so forth. In the first year, I got already a job for the high holders, and I got $1,000. I must say I was pretty good. And the second year, I called the same people, and I told them, listen, I started in Thai, you got to give me more money. I'm on the phone. They said, we'll give you $200 raise. I said, fine. The third year, I went, that was 48, when I did 51. I went to Baltimore, Maryland. They auditioned, maybe 20 cantors came. They've chosen me. They gave me $1,450 for 3 days, you know. That's a lot of money. And then I came to the Bronx, and I took an annual position. I officiated every Sabbath, and I'm a single boy.
How did you meet your wife?
The rabbi in that synagogue told me, a new rabbi came to occupy the pulpit, and he said, Kent, are you married? I said, no. He says, listen to me. I will give you 4 telephone numbers from 4 different girls. If you do not marry one of them, then you'll remain single, a bachelor. So, okay, I'll take your advice. He gave me the number. And I called my wife. And I made a date with her. The others I never saw, because when I came and I saw my wife.
What was her name then?
Helen Chervin. Chervin, the main name. They lived on Willoughby in Ridgewood. I mean, for me, I had to come into a house. They had a private home, air conditioning, a television. 1954, who has seen all these things? I mean, it wasn't so available yet, you know. And of course, she made a very big impression upon me. And we went for 1 year and we got married.
And did you have children?
Our first child was born in 1956. 56. Her name is Mala. And she was, and I assumed my position in the Bronx as cantor. Plus, I went in a little bit to the jewelry business. I was selling to the stores charm bracelets. Because my brother Bernie worked in a factory and he was the manager. So he helped me out. Because during the week I didn't have much to do, you know, just to study a little bit. But, and that's why we started our business, and thank God we did very well for ourselves. And then Mala was born. And then I applied for the job in Forest Hills. I saw an ad in the paper. I came here. They auditioned for 1 year. And I came and I auditioned and they took me.
And what is the name? What is the name of the synagogue?
The Queens Jewish Center of Forest Hills. It's the largest, at those days especially, it was the largest synagogue probably in New York City. In the morning when I came in 58, at 9 o'clock when you came, there was no more room, standing room on it. So many others. It was the most prestigious shul. The dean from, matter of fact, he was that time the president, the dean from Touro College, Bernie Lander. He engaged me as the chazan, and I was there for 30 years.
And your other 2 children were born?
And my son Michael was born in Forest Hills, and my daughter Rena was born in Forest Hills. They are already born in Forest Hills.
Did you ever talk to your children about the Holocaust?
I certainly do. One of the reasons that I've decided to make this video, whatever it's called, is because I want them to have this, and on every occasion, wherever they want them to play this tape, that they should not be forgotten. I want them to have the message. Because little by little, it's being forgotten. The Shoah time, the synagogue, this guy's busy, this guy's doing that. How should I say? My message to them is, how do you say a tzava? Tzava in that I want him to listen at least once or twice a month to this tape. That this thing should not be forgotten. like it says in the book of Esther. And this has to be remembered all the time. What the Amalekim did to the Jewish people, we should remember. They should remember also what the Germans did to the Jewish people, annihilated 6 million.
Have you become involved in any other organizations that deal with the Holocaust? Or
No, unfortunately, I go to the dinners of the Shoah. His name is Mr. Zborowski, which we happen to know each other with one of the brothers. I'm sort of like family, and I always went to these dinners. I'm always involved in Jewish things, but for the Holocaust especially, all what that is I used to officiate the Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance in the synagogue, special services. This was my job.
what is it you want people to know about the Holocaust, the people who watch this tape?
The people who watch this tape, first of all, like I mentioned before, what I want for my family, they should watch this tape. And they should not forget until children's children, until shall be redeemed by the Messiah. This should not be forgotten. There should not be any broken linkage, any broken chain from now until the time of Messiah. Because my personal feeling is this was much greater, but the Amalekim, I don't know how it's called in English.
The Amalekites.
The Amalekites did to the Jews. The Germans did 100,000 times worse. And this I want you to know, that if you think that if somebody would come and tell me what went on, I would tell the same thing like the Hungarian Jews. I don't believe it. I don't think it's possible. Maybe you have illusions. You can't. And see, and therefore, this is one thing that I cannot blame the people, because it's impossible to comprehend these things. But for whatever measure we can take and every precaution, that these things should not be forgotten. When you come into Auschwitz and Majdanek and all these camps and you see the eyeglasses and the baby shoes, this has stirred me until we shall be redeemed by the Messiah. This is my purpose of making this tape, and I want my children to know what was going on, and I never want they should forget this. This is my message to the people who will watch this video. And not take it lightly when it comes to Yom HaShoah. Oh, the Day of Remembrance, I have to go someplace else. The Day of Remembrance, there is a task on every Jew to find himself in the synagogue and pray for all those that we have lost.
Speaking of remembering, I know you always remembered the man who saved your life.
Right.
Did you ever have occasion to find him?
No, I did not have an occasion to find him, but it just so happened about a couple of months ago, my wife and I went to shop in Borough Park in a grocery store. I don't know how it happened, and my wife was looking around for some groceries. And there's a lady with a peruke, with a lady with a sheitel, a peruke she was wearing. I say, "What's your name?" And she tells me, "My name is Kerpel." I say, "Kerpel?" I tell her, I knew somebody by that name. A cantor in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. She says, "That's my uncle." That was my uncle because he's not alive. And somehow it slipped out from me. I asked her, "What was your maiden name?" I mean, what kind of business do I have with a lady? She's 50, maybe, I don't know how old she is. I just asked her. It came out of me. She tells me my maiden name was Marine. So I tell her, by any chance, your father came from Makau, Makeva in Jewish? She says, yes. So I told her, your father rescued my life. Not only my life, 394 Jews. This man has, forgot to tell you this before. 394. I want to mention, when I was liberated, I went on the main street like here, Fifth Avenue. And whom do I meet? The priest, the Polish priest. And I asked him, I said, "Father, what happened?" He tells me, "Child, what should I tell you? They killed them all. slaughter them all. And he asked me, he said, yesterday, how did you survive? So I told him the story, and he told me, this miracle was probably bigger than crossing the sea, the Red Sea. How you survived? He says, I don't know how the Polish priest. That's about it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Schwerd, who was in this picture?
This picture I received a couple of weeks ago. Somebody brought this in to me, and apparently it was given out by from Belz. It comes from Israel, and this is our cousin. His name was Rabbi Yisrael Schwerd. He was known as Rabbi Yisrael Rava. Rava Ruska was a town in Poland, and he was there, the Dayan. And
is that the judge?
He was a judge, right. And next to the Belzer Rebbe, we are talking not the one from over you talking, not even his father, his grandfather. His name was Rabbi Aaron Rabbaron Rokeach. I forgot it. Rabbaron Rokeach. And in 1940, when Poland, the Germans and the Russians made a pact that half of Poland will be divided, half to the Russian side and half to the German side. So at the beginning, it was told that Belz will be on the Russian side. Then they changed their mind, and it became German. So what happened was, it was a Sukkot, and they have told the Rebbe that the Rebbe should leave Belz and go to school, which is not far away from over there, and this was occupied by the Russians. But since it was a holiday, and the Rebbe didn't want to go, so he said he has to ask the Shaila, the question. He should be the judge. What should I do? And he said to the Rebbe, I am giving you permission that you can ride on the holiday. So just to cut it short, but who this man was, he was probably one of the biggest, next to the Belzer Rebbe, I would put him in the same category. This is our cousin.
Thank you, and this is the end of tape 5. Mr. Schwerd, who are the people in this picture?
These are my parents. My father's name was Isaac Schwerd, and my mother's name was Sarah Schwerd.
And when do you think this picture was taken?
This was taken probably in the 50s in Czechoslovakia.
Thank you. And could you tell us who this young man is?
This young man, it's me. This was taken in 1947 in Prague. I received a Polish passport to, and of course I have the American visa there too, to come to the United States.
Thank you.
I was 18 years old.
Thank you. And this document?
This is a bulletin when I assumed the position in 1958 in the Queens Jewish Center on Forest Hills, and they made me the welcome party that evening. I was there for 30 years.
Thank you. Who are the people in this picture?
To my left is Rabbi Grunblatt, the spiritual leader from the Queens Jewish Center. Next to him is my son Michael, and next to him is Mala, my oldest daughter. Next to her is my wife, and next to her is yours truly.
And who is the young girl in the front
The young
center?
girl, that's my youngest daughter, Rena.
And what are you holding?
Beg your pardon?
What are you holding?
I'm holding a plaque. The synagogue honored me with a plaque for 10 years for services rendered in the Queens Jewish Center.
Thank you. And could you explain this plaque, please?
This plaque was given to me on the 10th anniversary in the Queens Jewish Center as being the cantor. I think it was 1971 or 1972.
It looks like it's June 30th, 1971.
And it was June 30, 1971.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait.
And who are the people in this photograph?
As you can see, there's the president of the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations, distinguished lawyer, Professor Shimon Kostel.
Is he on the left?
He is on my left, yes. Next to him is, as you can see, the Vice President Quayle. And I am in the center singing the Star Spangled Banner. This was at the annual dinner of the the Orthodox Jewish congregations.
And remember about what year this might have been?
This was about 5 years ago.
Thank you.